Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at Superman, the first live-action film outing of James Gunn's DC universe. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We're growing our audience, and any support or love you can give us, we would definitely appreciate that. Let us know down in the comments below what your thoughts are. Do you agree with our assessment, or do you think we're just talking nonsense? And consider sharing these videos with everybody that you know, because sharing is caring, and the more people get to know us, maybe they'll get to like us. So a few weeks ago, we went to go see Superman. When it came out in theaters. So we saw it that Saturday. What was it, the 13th, Lee?
Yeah.
And when we did our trailer reaction at the beginning of this year, we did express some reservations about what we thought or speculated what we could possibly see when the movie came out in July. But before we get into that, I just want to give a quick warning. Anybody who has not seen Superman and they don't want their experience ruined, I don't know why you haven't seen it yet, but if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything spoiled, just tune off and check out other episodes that we've done on the podcast. Feel free to check out the trailer reaction we did from the beginning of this year. I'll have that link down in the description below. You can check that out, and you can listen to our thoughts and speculations of what we thought would happen in this movie. Otherwise, if you have seen Superman and you really want to know what our thoughts are, or if you haven't seen the movie but you just don't care about spoilers, then go ahead and sit back and let's dive in. So, Lee, when we what we know about the DC universe is it's always played second fiddle to Marvel. It's always been trying to take, 100+ years of intellectual property and trying to fit them into a nice jigsaw puzzle the way that Kevin Feige did with Marvel. And for a long time, it's been a hit or miss. I mean, we've seen it with Zack Snyder in his attempt to try to fit everything together, and it didn't really come out the way that he wanted to before he got canned. And then James Gunn came on after he was let go by Marvel to direct the Suicide Squad, which would be considered a soft reboot. And then after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 came out, he was offered the role to basically become the new head honcho, or I should say co-head head honcho of DC, and basically rebuild it along the Marvel playbook. And James Gunn, a few years ago, actually released a video where he released his plans for the DC universe. And one of the projects that was slated as part of Gods and Monsters was Superman. So, Lee, why don't you go ahead and take us into this first outing of the DC universe, and
yes,
let's know what your thoughts are.
An interesting first outing, to say the least. Now,
well, it's an ambitious one. I mean, we said it in the trailer reaction. We'll say it again. It is a very bold, ballsy, and ambitious move on James Gunn's part.
Yes. Now, Luca, before we get into this, right, I just want to make sure we're transparent for our audience, right? Because I think as a lot of this has come out, right, there's this very, James Gunn versus Zack Snyder, people battling in the trenches over these directors and their, kind of, I would say, rendition of Superman, or what they do or do not like. So I just wanted to see for you, right, do you have a bias towards one of these directors or not? Are you a secret Gunn or Snyder fanboy that you need to let the audience know before we start talking about this?
Honestly, I try to remain as neutral as possible, just because with Gunn, we really haven't seen too much of his too much of his handling in the filmmaking aspect as we have seen in the TV aspect. And then with Zack Snyder, if you've seen one Zack Snyder movie, you've seen them all. Basically every movie he's made has been an attempt to recapture the spirit of 300, whether it's Sucker Punch or Dawn of Justice.
Sure. And I think that's important for us to call out, because I would as well tell you that I don't have very strong feelings either way. So I think, I'm trying to go into this with a very unbiased attitude. So, don't want to get called out, either one of us in the comments about being like pro Gunn versus pro Snyder. I think we can look at this and just kind of have a debate over the merits of what it is, regardless.
What can I say this? Because, since we've seen that movie, I've had some time to think about a few things about this movie in comparison with previous film iterations. If Zack Snyder did something in Man of Steel that I think is worth giving a shout out to, I'll give him credit for it, just as much as if I think James Gunn didn't do a very good job in his first film outing, we'll definitely call it out here. It's not like we're gonna, it's not like we're pro Gunn or pro Snyder or anything like that. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's start off right, because I mean, I don't think I got very far into this before it's like, this was a gutsy decision, right? Because how do we meet Superman in the Superman movie, right? We meet him getting his ass kicked, right? And it was such an odd way to start off this series, right? And I think there is a little bit of that, right? Because, the DCEU, right, has been beaten up a lot, right? So I kind of thought it was kind of amusing in my head. I was like, I see what he's trying to do, right? The DC's been beat up. We're going to start off with, Superman being beat up and as he tries to, like, overcome his obstacles. So it was a little bit of, I thought, some art imitating life, so to say, with that. Whether it's, I think that there is a little bit of that because, I think about the monkeys and everything like that. I think he does kind of have a little bit of that mindset for Gunn, at least. So, but we start off with Superman getting his ass kicked, which obviously is very interesting. But let's talk about Superman, right? Before we even really get into this, right? Superman is such an iconic character, right? This is probably one of the, if not the most iconic comic book character out there. And with that, I think a lot of people have very strong expectations from that, whether that's someone that's been following the comics as long as the comics have been out there, or still continue to follow the comics, or like I said, people that started and watched the Christopher Reeve version that kind of got off with seeing Superman on the big screen. So this character means a lot to a lot of people, right? So I wanted to get your thoughts, right? So David Corn Sweat, right? He plays our Superman. What are some of your just thoughts on how he played the character?
I mean, he's definitely taking a page out of Matt Reeves' playbook. He's not giving us a Superman who's completely brand new, but he's not that experienced either, right?
Yes,
because when we saw Robert Pattinson's Batman, we're looking at looking at a Batman who was in year 2 of his crime fighting career, and that's kind of the same thing we're getting with David Corenswent's portrayal of the Man of Steel. A bit nerdy.
Yes.
I'll say that he's a bit of a nerd. He's a bit of a dork. He's kind of he's a bit of a goody two shoes, really.
Yeah, he's a Boy Scout.
Yeah, all the way down to the fact that he won't swear. He's got a bit of a Ned Flanders quality to him. Almost. So I mean, which is not entirely bad because because I read I think it was either Screen Rant or Collider where they said, where they called out David Cornswent's portrayal of Clark Kent as as rather old-fashioned campiness, and they said it's not actually a bad thing. It kind of works in their favor because that's how he is in the comics. He's he's not this dark, vengeful character like Bruce Wayne or this happy-go-lucky kind of guy who's content to just party around with people and just hang around like Oliver Queen. He's sort of the average boy next door who just happens to have the powers of a god.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think I'll give David Cornswet some props for, I think, kind of the general vibe I got from Superman, because I think that this was something where James Gunn really wanted a authentic comic book representation of it. And while I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm super in the know about it, um, most feedback I've seen, or like what I've seen a lot of people talk about, is that this kind of felt like he was really interpreting the comic book Superman very well. So I think props got to go there for that. Now, one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of, right, and I think this goes to, once again, how you kind of think about Superman, because when you think about Superman, you kind of think of this character that's like he's a physical specimen, right? Like he's like someone you always think about, this just like really strong character, like physically, right? And I think that you know, in the Snyderverse, right, we've seen Henry Cavill play that role extremely well. And in this version, like, I know the actor that plays him, right, David Corenswet, is a big guy. I think he's like 6'4", looks really big. The suit doesn't really do him a lot of justice. I know it's weird to talk about his suit, but I feel like there was so much kind of discourse around just the look of Superman that I felt like I want to talk about that. And I think that I'm going to agree with those people. I don't know if I really liked the way the suit looked. I thought it was maybe...
so you're expecting more muscles, more definition?
Yes, I was thinking, and I know it's weird to talk about, right? Because we're sitting here talking about, like, you know, how it looks, but I think it was really baggy. I don't think it does this idea of Superman justice, right? Because I think when you think of Henry Cavill, right, like the guy fills out that costume, right? Like he feels like it's like there with him. This one, it just feels like really baggy, and I think it just doesn't give you the same level of like toughness or that physicality that I associate with Superman.
It kind of almost has like a DIY kind of vibe too.
Yeah,
like you kind of put, it's kind of, again, it's kind of like with Robert Pattinson's bat suit. Like, you know, it looks like it got, you know, assembled together from all these different, you know, bits and pieces.
Kind of like Spider-Man when he's starting off, right? Like he's just putting together his own suit.
Right. So maybe he just went around the Fortress of Solitude and was asking the robots to make him a suit, and I guess he found like a suit that was just lying around, and he kind of modded it a little bit and just went with that. I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. Like, maybe that's not the definitive suit, but that's just like a starter suit. You know,
got it, right? So he's got to earn his symbol, right?
That I mean, that's what I'm thinking here. That's what because if you think about it, like, you know, whenever we see, like, you know, the early versions of superheroes, you know, we know that you know what they're wearing now isn't going to be what they're wearing, you know, in later iterations. Like, they're just wearing something that kind of help them get started, you know.
Yeah.
And then
you get some upgrade.
And as they, you know, get into battles, and as they learn from their experiences, they figure out, oh, we'll maybe put more, you know, protection in the chest and less in the abs and all that stuff, and maybe make the legs, you know, a little bit lighter so I can run faster, you know.
Yep. Make the cowl so you can actually move your neck around.
Right, or maybe make the cape like a little shorter so it's more aerodynamic, something like that. You know?
Sure. So want to talk about the suit. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, right? And for myself, like, I kind of knew a little bit about what I was going to get into, but I didn't know a lot, right? I try my best not to kind of spoil anything for me as much as possible. A very interesting decision to not have this be a true origin story, right? Like you point out, this is a Superman, and I forget, has he been Superman? Like, he's been out for like 3 years or 3 months. Like, I just remember at the beginning, there's a bunch of threes with everything.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's either in year 2 or year 3.
Okay, I don't know.
So the world already knows about Superman. It's not like in Man of Steel where they're like, oh shit, who is this guy? Like, we don't know who he is.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, right? Because this is supposed to be the origin of the DCEU.
Well, I wouldn't say it's an origin. It's more like a reboot.
Oh, I'm
really.
sorry. Yes, yes. This is the origin of the new DCU. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So this is the they're taking a second shot at the DCU, right? And they don't start with an origin, right? I think that that's very interesting. What do you feel like that was the right play to
Yeah.
just kind of go into this with the mindset that the audience is going to know Superman and they're just going to kind of just absorb everything that's happening?
Oh yeah. I mean, at this point, if you don't know the origins of Superman, then there really is no helping you. I mean, you've got 50 plus years of movies and TV shows that just hammer that point, you know, over and over again. I mean, for God's sakes, Man of Steel, spends was the first 10 minutes of the movie exploring, Krypton and Jor-El making plans to send little Kal-El to Earth so he can survive the planet's destruction. I mean, we did a trailer reaction to Mortal Kombat. Let's not forget NetherRealm Studios also did Injustice, which also covered the origins of Superman, in their own way. So it's not like it's not like people don't know where he came from. It's just it's just one of those things where it's a firmly established fact, unless James Gunn decided to change things where Krypton is actually Earth in the future and he's being sent to Earth in the past to save it, then there really isn't much that he can add to it, right?
Sure.
So what? And it's kind of like how now, when you look at the Batman, for instance, I'm going to be referencing that for quite a bit, but the reason why we didn't see an origin story of how Bruce Wayne became Batman is because, again, that's a very well-known storyline.
Exactly.
Again, unless it turns out that Martha Wayne survived her murder and she became a crime lord, then there really isn't anything else that can be added. So so why get bogged down the first 10 to 20 minutes of the movie when you can just get right into the action?
Yep, and that's a good point, right? Because I think, and I was talking to my uncle about this, and he was kind of surprised by that. I'm like,
wait. So has your uncle seen Superman? Yeah.
No, not yet.
Oh.
So, but it was interesting because going into it, I'm thinking like logically, you just want to make it be an origin story because this is kind of like your new start. So
but how many times can how many ways can you do it? It's like
I don't disagree at all, right?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, right? I think it was a good idea to go in this with a different thing, right? I'm just in like we've seen so many of these origin stories, it almost becomes second nature that's what you're gonna get, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that he went out and did something different, I think was a good move because like you point out with Batman, how many times do we have to watch Batman's parents get shot in an alleyway before it's like, okay, cool, we know it, right? We don't need to see the pearl necklace getting destroyed 1,000 times.
How many times do we need to see Peter Parker get bitten by a spider?
Yes, or poor Uncle Ben getting killed, right? So it's just we get it, right? I think we get it. So I do give him props that he trusts the audience to be like, hey, this is an established franchise. I'm not going to have training wheels on for it. So Superman, right? He's gotten the crap kicked out of him. So we get to meet Crypto, the super dog, which gutsy to have Crypto in this, right? Because I think it kind of goes with Gunn though, because I think he has that very comic feel to it, right? Like he doesn't want this to be overly serious. So, having Crypto the dog being in it, I think matches that really well. So Crypto brings him to the Fortress of Solitude, right? Where, Superman heals. And we kind of see this message that comes from his parents that's being played, right? Because this is something that I guess helps his healing process, or it's something that he watches quite a bit. And we find out that only a partial bit of the message is viewable, which I have to bring up because that becomes a huge story point later. But I just wanted to put that seed in people's brains that that's going to be. So After Superman gets all healed up at the Fortress of Solitude, he re-enters the fight with the Hammer of, I think it's Baravia, right? Was that the name of the place?
Yeah.
So he gets back into this fight, and he gets his ass kicked again. And I was just like, oh, geez, man, Superman not having a good day. But this is where we kind of get introduced to our villain, right? So we have the Hammer of Baravia, which I guess spoilers for later on is actually this character Ultraman, and he's ultimately being controlled by Lex Luthor, right? So Nicholas Hoult plays Lex Luthor, right? How did you like Lex Luthor in this version of Superman?
I mean, they're continuing the trend of making him a sort of tech bro, really.
Yeah. Very much so.
Because I mean, if Jesse Eisenberg wasn't enough of a tech bro, in spite of the fact of him playing Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network, then they're really going to dial it up to 11 and make sure this guy dreams about tech when he goes to sleep, and when he's banging his girlfriend, he's imagining
Superman.
Computers and AI and all that crap.
Oh, sorry, I thought we're going.
Superman also. There's like a really. I mean, there is an unhealthy, almost a homoerotic obsession with Superman. Like the reason given, it just made me shake my head and wonder. There's got to be something going wrong with this guy. This guy needs to be in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, it was weird, right? And I obviously Lex Luthor, right? You get this very brain versus brawn type of argument, right? Where Lex Luthor, super smart. They kind of talk up the fact that, he's been studying Superman's fighting, all these years and knows everything. I think, unfortunately, it kind of creates a little bit of this kind of like, I guess, weird way of portraying his brains, because we kind of see him in this like control tower, right? And he's just like shouting like fight combos at Ultraman, and like all the drones. It just comes off as very goofy. Like it's hard for me to keep it seriously because you have to think like you're seeing this fight, right? Superman obviously moves really fast, right? Like, faster than a speeding bullet, right? Like, we've kind of known that for, since the dawn of Superman. So it feels, I know what they want to do, right? They want to show that Lex Luthor's this really smart, analytical guy, and he's trying to best Superman in his own way. But it just comes off super weird that like he's like giving them fight commands, and it's just like 6B and 79A, and I don't know. It was just really goofy, and to have like the rest of like his cronies in the tower just like kind of cheering him on is like, are you guys like all like bad people, or I don't know.
Well, that's the implication that I got. Like they're all just like they all just either really hate Superman or they're just getting paid like a shit ton of money to do this.
Yeah, and it's weird too, right? Because it's like, do you guys not have like family in Metropolis that like you're literally just like having?
Well, obviously not. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this shit, Lee.
Of course, but it's a weird thing to think about. It's like, do you not know anyone that's here? Like you're sitting here like putting everyone like all these other people in danger to kill Superman. I mean, granted, we don't really go into anything with the henchmen or anything like that, but I always thought that was weird. We also have, I don't know, so we know Ultraman, right? And we'll kind of hold on to this weird twist that comes later with Ultraman. But then there's also like the weird nanite lady that I think her name's like the Engineer.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's too many characters, right? I think there was. Did you need to have the Engineer? Like, what was the purpose of adding her in for you?
Oh, well, I mean, James Gunn is going to be doing a movie about the Authority, and she's one of the characters in it.
Oh, there we go. So that's what it is, right? So this is starting to feel a lot like try to like do the Mummy, right, and try to create the MonsterVerse, and just having to throw random people in there because her character was, to me, so unneeded for the plot. I almost forgot she existed as I was reviewing the movie. So, but yeah, that's our villains, right? So, Superman gets his butt kicked again, and then the Hammer of Bravia, aka Ultraman, ends up leaving. And this is kind of we get like a little bit of a break here, where we have Superman now as Clark Kent meeting up with Lois Lane. And obviously everyone, if you ever seen Superman in the movies, TV series, Lois Lane is the love interest. And they're already dating in this movie, right? Which makes sense. But once again, I think it kind of messes with you because in your brain, you're like, oh yeah, Lois Lane, that's a character that Superman knows. But they're already in a relationship at this stage. So once again, interesting, but Lois Lane ends up doing this kind of rather intense interview with Superman, where she kind of like calls out his involvement in this kind of altercation between Bravia and was it like Joniper? I don't know. Luca, help me out with that. Was it Joniper, something like that?
Something like that.
This fictitious country, right? So she kind of like talks about it, and she does bring up some compelling arguments. Like, I understand from Superman's perspective why he wants to not have this kind of like war happen. But Superman, I don't think grasps the bigger picture, right? This kind of geopolitical kind of undertone that happens when you're doing something like this. And I feel like Lois Lane does kind of like call him out on that. And it actually kind of makes sense, right? It's weird to say like, hey, someone stopping a war is necessarily a bad thing. But I think it does kind of open up some interesting ideas that Superman being super powerful doesn't always have good things. So would you kind of think about some of that, like kind of, I guess, like dialogue around, like, does Superman have kind of this carte blanche ability just to step in and do whatever he wants?
I mean that is kind of tricky, but I would say like the whole Bravia conflict for me kind of took me out of the story, really. It's one of those things where James Gunn was just trying to do too many things in too many places at the same time.
Agreed.
And I was thinking, this is something that you could have just localized to Metropolis and still ask the same questions, but still get the same answers.
Agreed. Right.
In my view.
It gave me very much like, I think back to Marvel and everything that they've done, and you think of like the Sokovia Accords, right, which is kind of that we've had that discussion in other superhero films about how much control do these superheroes have in kind of the world and everything that they're allowed to do. So I think it kind of wanted to ask some of these questions, but I think the film was just so packed with so many things, it never had really an opportunity to get into it the way it did. But it did kind of make me interested. How did you like kind of this representation of Lois Lane, and how did you kind of like their relationship that you see between Lois Lane and Clark Kent?
Well, I will say this. I mean, Rachel Brosnahan definitely gives her a more quick-witted, sharp, kind of person who is very much a journalist, unlike what we see with Amy Adams, who just happens to spend her time at the Daily Planet. But do we ever see her work there? And then Margot Kidder. Well, the only reason why you would know Margot Kidder's Lois Lane works there is because the comics. And I will say this too, because past iterations of Lois Lane, they've always been portrayed as sort of sexy foils to Superman. The damsel in distress, the lady who's there to be pretty and just be eye candy for the audience, right? Rachel Brosnahan definitely gives us, a Lois with a lot more substance.
Yes.
Her asking those hard-hitting questions. It's like, wow, she's really not pulling any punches. Like, she's really going to hit Superman where it hurts.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
and I'll also say too. I mean, just by the way she dresses, she's got a bit of a Annie Hall kind of quality to her character. right? She's not going to be your conventional, you know, damsel in distress who needs help. In fact, she's going, you know, she's risking her life to go and try to save Superman later on in the movie, you know.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting because, like, we get this. She's a very strong-willed character, and I think her job as a journalist is something that's really in the forefront of what she does, and it meshes well with the personality they want to portray Lois Lane having. So I think it's very on brand for this character, and I also think it gives a lot more interesting depth to the relationship. Right? Like, I mean, they're a couple, and it feels like a genuine couple, right? That has these types of disagreements, obviously on a definitely a different level because, you know, she's, you know, banging Superman. But in that same token, it does kind of create this like kind of interesting dynamic more so than I think we've seen in other iterations. So I will say that there was some interesting things that popped up with that. So, but obviously, you know, in her fervor to get the story, she says some things, and I think it causes this kind of confrontation with Superman where he kind of walks out. So we kind of see that their relationship is obviously a little bit on the rocks.
Yeah, they're on a break, basically.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So you know, after they kind of like split up, we see, you know, Superman ends up fighting this kaiju that Lex Luthor had kind of thrown out there. I will let you. What did the creature remind you of, Luca?
Kind of reminds me of a Pokemon character.
Well, you said something. Sorry, I was trying to help remind you a little bit of Stitch, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
I was sorry. I was trying to help give you that joke because I'll give you credit for that. It did make me think of it too when it happened. Obviously, a very bald-looking Stitch, but you know, kind of quirky like that, where it just starts off as like this little creature, and obviously, by the time we encounter it again, it's much larger.
I mean, James Gunn. I mean, James Gunn's really, you know, trying to take the piss out of Marvel and Disney, isn't he?
He likes, I will say though, right? He does like to come up with a lot of these really crazy villains, right? You know, thinking of, you know, some of the other iterations of stuff that he's brought to the main screen. It definitely makes things a lot more interesting to have these very distinct characters out there. So we got this Superman fighting a kaiju. Eventually, he is supported by, we're going to call it the Justice Gang. I believe that was the name that was sticking at the time, where we meet Green Lantern, Hawk Girl, and Mr. Terrific. And we kind of see, you know, kind of this fight. I did like some things like Superman saving a squirrel. Was not something I was expecting. Also, you know, saved like a dog in this. So, you know, I think that goes back to what we talked about, you know, Superman being this very big Boy Scout, right? You know, always out there to save everything, not necessarily just people, but animals as well. But yeah, so we meet the Justice Gang in this fight. And what are your thoughts about the Justice Gang and their inclusion with this, knowing we have everything else already in this? Now we're throwing in the Justice Gang. What did you think about that?
Well, I will refer you to the trailer reaction we did 7 months ago, where where we expressed our concern. You know, is this going to be a Superman movie, or is this going to be more of a Justice League movie in everything but name? You know,
yeah.
Just because if you're going to make a Superman movie, then just make it about Superman. And you know, and as much as I didn't care for Man of Steel, I will give Zack Snyder credit. When he made a Superman movie, it focused primarily on Superman, right? So I will give him props for that, because I felt like I don't doubt James Gunn's ability to make a good superhero movie, because he does have a pretty decent track record. But if you'll notice, you know, and we talked about this too before recording, a lot of his superhero movies are team focused, and it works to a degree because you have these misfits who kind of come together and they kind of have to learn how to work together to save the world. I mean, we've seen this with Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad, Creature Commandos, even Peacemaker's gang in the TV show. But but after a while, it becomes a bit of an impediment for him because now it becomes his mainstay. Like, it's not something that he can switch off. He's got to have that team in there because he's so used to that. You know what I mean? And listen, like, if James Gunn wants to make a movie with the Justice Gang, that's his right. We're not here to tell him he shouldn't have done that. But one thing that I was thinking about, all of this week was, and we actually this is actually piggybacking off our last review of Captain America: Brave New World, where basically we half jokingly said it was really the Incredible Hulk sequel, right?
Yeah.
So James Gunn is a comic book nerd. There's no doubt about that. Like, his credentials are bona fide. Like, this is someone who is a dyed-in-the-wool nerd who has no shame in showing off his knowledge of comic book lore, right? I will give him props for that. Zack Snyder, bless him, he loves superheroes, but he's basically a jock who learned about the Justice League on Wikipedia and decided to go off of that instead of exploring the lore a lot deeper. Now, in thinking about about this movie and just looking back at the trailer reaction we did at the beginning of this year, I was just thinking, if James Gunn had called this movie Super Friends instead of Superman, he could have been able to get away with a lot more.
Oh yeah.
And furthermore, I mean, and anybody who's born after 1995, Super Friends was the archaic or the old way of saying Justice League. After 95, people just called them the Justice League.
I get it now.
But if he had just called the movie Super Friends, I would, and I will defend this point too. If he had called it Super Friends, my perception of the movie would have been a lot more favorable, because at that point, I'm not going in there with the expectation of just seeing a Superman movie. I would go in with the expectation of seeing a team of superheroes, but there's a Superman focus, right? It's just like if you watch Super Friends or Justice League, episode, every week they'll focus on a particular hero. Like one week, like this week, it'll be Superman heavy, and the next week it'll be Hawkgirl heavy, and then the week after that, it'll be a Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific combo kind of thing, right? But I feel like, and it kind of confused me too, because if he had called it Super Friends, it would have been on brand with what James Gunn does, because he takes these obscure characters and gives them the limelight, and then all of a sudden we know who they are. Because admittedly, you and I had no idea who the Guardians of the Galaxy were until James Gunn brought them to the big screen. So if he had just done that, if he just called it the Super Friends, it would have taken the pressure off right then and there. He wouldn't have to worry so much about making a Superman movie, because technically he did make a Superman movie. It was called Super Friends and it focused on Superman, but you get your Superman movie right there. And also too, I mean, it definitely would have made things a whole lot easier, because if you call your movie Superman, you are taking on a huge level of responsibility and expectations, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, hell, you could be if Christopher Nolan was given the keys to the kingdom in order to make a Superman movie, he probably would have been under just as much pressure as James Gunn would have been, Yeah. So, so automatically announcing that he was going to make a Superman movie, he already painted a target on his back, and everybody's expectations from the executives at Warner down to, humble part-time film reviewers such as ourselves, we had this expectation immediately that he needed to make a Superman movie that was going to knock it out of the park, that was going to be better than Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. It wasn't going to be dark, but it wasn't going to be campy. It was going to be nice and balanced, and he had to do it in a way that made us appreciate who the character was, but also tell the story in a way that we'd never seen before. And there's actually one scene that really stood out to me, that, and I even told you this at the time of watching, he was definitely taken from Man of Steel, which we'll get into later on. But I just feel like as soon as he announced he was making Superman, he had dug himself into a hole. And yes, according to the box office reviews, I mean, it is scoring a lot of money in the box office, and he's getting substantial returns. But I feel like I feel like that was a lucky shot. It wasn't something that was guaranteed.
Yeah,
right.
I feel like it felt like it's almost like one of those things where it's too big to fail. Right. And that's how I kind of looked at it like this. I think people were really starving for something like this. Just, especially for people that are big into DC. So this was your opportunity to get it. But to your point, right, like it just feels like when I think back to all the characters that were already have in there, these storylines with the whole Bravia thing, and you got these, Lex Luthor pulling the strings, and then you got, you bring in the Justice Gang, which, like I said, this is nothing against the Justice Gang as a whole. Like, I think Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern there was great, right? I mean, he was, got the ridiculous haircut, and, it was funny when he's like kind of intervening with some of the stuff, and he's like sitting there using his Green Lantern powers, and he's like giving a big middle finger, like shit, like that's like funny, right? I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. Hawkgirl, it felt like almost unneeded. I mean, I just didn't really get much out of her.
You need a female hero in there. I mean,
sure, yes, you need something to break up the sausage party, so to say. So I get that. And honestly, the interesting with this, like, I mean, I would say the most positive reaction has been Mr. Terrific, right? I would think that most people have had a really strong impression of him, which I don't disagree with at all. I think he was fun to see with this. Now, what I didn't realize, right, was that Mr. Terrific, right, the actor, Eddie, I'm going to say it's Gathegi, and I'm so sorry, I probably butchered that. But he's actually been a superhero before. Do you know where he's from, Luca?
Eddie Gathegi.
So he was in a superhero film that was done. I don't remember what was done. Let me look. I could tell you when it was done.
Oh, it was in X-Men First Class?
Yes. Good job. Yes. I really put you on the spot. Excellent work. So, yes. So, and I was surprised by that because I'm like, I remember, I mean, obviously, it's been a long time since I've seen that film. But when I saw, I was like, oh my gosh, that is the guy. So yeah, cool that he's gone from the X-Men universe, right? And now he's doing this here in the DC. So but interesting job with Mr. Terrific. But gosh, it just felt very overblown, right? And I think this is kind of the stage, right, in the story where, for me, we've seen a lot, right? Like, he's thrown a lot at us. Like, we know about Lex Luthor, Ultraman. We got this, subplot with Bravia. We have Superman's kind of like relationship with Lois Lane.
We got the engineer hanging out somewhere doing her own thing.
Yes, right. So you've brought in all this stuff.
Well, hold on. Let's not forget Lex Luthor's girlfriend is also saying Jimmy Olsen on the side too.
That's true, right? And I honestly, it's funny you should say that because the whole time I'm like, there's too much in here. I'm just not going to bring it up. But you're right? That was obviously another really significant subplot that actually kind of got the movie to its conclusion. So who would have known that Jimmy Olsen was the secret hero in all this? But it was honestly like there's so much plot thrown at you. It just became so convoluted. And I think this is where, to me, the wheels start to fall off was after, he's fighting this kaiju, right? We see Lex Luthor. He broke into the Fortress of Solitude. And the engineer, the nanites lady, which I'm just going to call her. So she is able to get that message, right, from Superman's parents. But, and, obviously in Deus Ex Machina twist, she's able to restore the rest of the image. And this is just, to me, where things are just totally out of whack. Lex Luthor, their explanation is, well, he just brought it to a bunch of like linguistic experts, and they like kind of translate everything. And all of a sudden, Superman's parents sent him to Earth to conquer it, kind of like Invincible is doing right now. And now, granted, for my understanding that this has been somewhat done in the comics as well, but I can't really think of a rendition of his like Kryptonian parents where they've been perceived negatively. And this, to me, felt like it didn't sync. It didn't feel right to me. It was, once again, another subplot that didn't need to be added in. And I felt like the reasoning that people started to hate Superman, which was kind of the linchpin of everything that happens, was just too far-fetched, right? It's just like, oh, cool, Lex Luthor just had a bunch of linguistics and they figured out this language that nobody knows. They were able to decipher what it meant on this like video playback that was sketchy, was broken up, looked doctored. So there was all this stuff that's in there, and it's really funny as we're talking about this, right? There's all this stuff going on with this guy that owned a very famous island, right? And we're talking about this in the U.S. in the news where people try to show his jail cell, and there's like this cut in it, and everyone's like calling out like, oh, we don't know what happened there. This is a cover up. So really ironic, in the actual world, we're experiencing something where if there's anything that smells fishy, everyone's calling bullshit on it. But in the Superman world, we can see something very fishy, and people just totally just like, nope, I just believe everything that Lex Luthor's telling me.
I mean, how gullible are these people?
It seems silly, right? Because here's the other thing, right? Is Lex Luthor that trustworthy in this universe? Because we've never actually seen him interact or like have any type of like, kind of discussions with the masses. So it's like, do people just trust this guy? Does he have like a bunch of goodwill built up, and that's why people just like fall for this hook, line, and sinker? It is just such a weird thing to base.
Well, to be fair, when he's having his meeting with the with the Defense Department, they don't trust him. So it's just one of those weird things where the suits don't really trust him, but apparently your average Tom, Dick, and Harry will be like, oh well, all right, I guess I believe Lex Luthor. And what I find disturbing is the fact that they turn on Superman real quickly.
Oh yeah, it's instant.
Like right away. It's like so now I'm like, so now I'm thinking, all right, so one, you people are gullible, and two, you're not trustworthy because you'll just turn on the spot. So what the fuck is going on here? And what I find so frustrating is that particular plot line with the with the whole Kryptonian message, being sinister, it doesn't really go anywhere.
No.
It kind of just like sits there with its wheels spinning in the air, and they're just hoping beyond hope that you forget about that and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. It does have a minor payoff, but you're right. In this movie that's got so many other things going on, this was the least needed thing to generate another like a D story with everything else going on.
Well, I think it might be an F story or G story at this point, but I was gonna say because when we were watching this movie, Superman, after having a heart-to-heart with Green Lantern, decides to turn himself in. And I told you, I said they're basically relying on that trope from Man of Steel, where
yes,
Superman decides, I'll just turn myself in because I want to prove I'm not a threat to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, he just makes things a whole lot worse as a result.
Yep. Yeah, and it's like I said, it's something where I kind of get from the story why he wants to do it. I just wish the reasoning behind it was stronger, because it's set up in such a way that it just makes it so hard to believe that it's gonna happen like that, because we've seen Superman do constant good. And yes, you can make the argument, oh, it's a setup, he's trying to lull people into this, like, sense of security and everything.
Yeah, but if he's been doing it consistently for years, I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like, come on, like,
yeah,
where have you been?
Yeah, the transition to him being public enemy number one came too fast, right? If you're doing an origin story where people don't know Superman and, he does like things that cause a lot of collateral damage, you could make that argument, and I could understand that people would be a little bit skittish,
which made sense when it happened in Man of Steel, because
exactly,
well, not to mention the fact, because what we see in James Gunn's Superman sort of already played out in Man of Steel, except instead of it being Clark's parents, it's General Zod and Faora, right, coming to Earth and deciding, oh, well, this is a really nice planet. I think we'll go ahead and take over and terraform it and call it New Krypton. I mean, that would have made. I mean, that made far more sense. I mean, mind you, it was poorly executed, but it made a lot more sense than what we see here, because one, it's kind of like his word against theirs, really.
Yes.
And you mentioned it. You mentioned it when we saw the movie. Was there were? I mean, unless there was like a student exchange program where people from Earth went to Krypton to learn the Kryptonian language, I don't see how they could have figured out what the parents were saying, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's
language. It's not like they can't go to the Rosetta Stone and be like, oh, we got Kryptonian on there too, right?
Yeah, and another thing too is the fact that even, I mean, let's just say for argument's sake, like they did tell Clark, hey, you really do need to conquer the planet and have like a harem full of women. I mean, at this point, he's at a point in his life where he's already fully grown and developed. He's not going to just change all of a sudden, decide, oh yeah, I think I am going to, do what my birth parents told me to do after all this time.
Sure.
I mean that would make absolutely no sense. Like, I mean, he has no incentive to do so because he's lived a relatively good life here on Earth, and he's been shaped by Martha and Jonathan Kent to where he knows that's not something that you should do. So unless the people on Earth are just incredibly thick, then what we see transpire for the rest of the movie makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
And let's be real here, right? If someone was having sex with Superman, they would have posted that shit all the time, right? Like, let's be real. Like that'd be big news. But yeah, so Superman turns himself in because he's now public enemy number one because of, a very questionable video that all of a sudden we can, magically translate in like 12 hours, and able to get out there. So this is where like everything just kind of gets crazy because Lex Luthor is in charge, I guess, of Superman's imprisonment, or at least is there to find out more information about him. So he brings them to a prison that is in a pocket dimension that Lex Luthor has created. And this is just like, I felt like I was going a little bit crazy at this stage because I'm like, this is a very weird thing to introduce this late in the game. Now, granted, we have seen it. Like, we've seen them use this pocket dimension, so it's like set up. It's not just like totally thrown in your face. But this is where we really get to experience it, and it's kind of wild, right? So it's literally just Lex Luthor's own personal prison because he has people there that he just doesn't like, and I think he has like an ex-girlfriend there as well. So it's just kind of this really weird spot, and this is where
don't forget he's also got the monkey lab where he's got monkeys.
Right. Yes.
So really it's more like a jail / storage room / I don't know, man cave kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the monkey's sitting there just like stirring shit up, like it's just like a bunch of bots out there just like saying things to draw attention to everything, and I'm just like, I guess definitely I feel like you're going for a hidden meaning there, having a bunch of monkeys just typing a bunch of random stuff, just spewing hate. So I think there's something there you're trying to tell people, but very, like I said, weird thing to include. But you have to think like, hey, how is Superman going to be held in prison? and that's because there's this character, I think it's called like the Elementalist or something.
Yeah, Metamorpho. Yeah.
Metamorpho. I'm sorry, you're right. Yes, Metamorpho. Thank you. That is able to, kind of like create these elements, and he's able to create kryptonite. And he's able to keep Superman hostage there. And the only reason that Metamorpho is wanting to do this is because his son is also being held prisoner.
Yep, little Joey. Yep.
Which, like I said, I get. Now my whole thing is like, I mean, do you think he's gonna let your kid go, or like, I don't know. I always have problems when they create this type of kind of reasoning behind these characters, because it's like, I mean, I don't know if it's really worthwhile for you to do this, but it is what it is. But that's why he's there. So he's trapped in this pocket dimension. But Lois Lane, actually having some substance or having some purpose in the film, she's on the hunt to figure out what happened to Superman. So she goes to the Justice Gang. And while most people put her off, Mr. Terrific is interested in helping her out. So they go to, where this pocket dimension is. They're able to help Superman and Crypto escape. So I forgot to mention Crypto was also kidnapped. But, don't want to throw too much story nonsense at people. But they're able to escape, and they bring everyone to the Kent family farm, right? And we talked about his Jor-El, his Kryptonian family, and how they kind of have like very minimal plot relevance. And now we have this like 2 or 3 minute encounter with it's Kansas, right? Is that where they're located?
Yeah, Smallville, Kansas.
Thank you, Kansas, right? So he's there with Mom and Pa Kent, and I'm just like, why? Like, is this needed? Like, is this the pep talk that gets Superman over the hump? Like, we haven't even really met his I guess his Earth parents this whole time, but now they're gonna be like integral to the story, and it felt totally out of place. What'd you think about Mom and Pa Kent? Because they played a much critical role in the Man of Steel version, right, that we've seen previously. In this one, they just feel like throwaway characters.
I mean, at this point, it's like, well, James, do you really want to put these people in there? You do? All right, sure, why not? I mean, because you've already thrown so much, at us. I mean, and it's hitting critical mass. I mean, at this point, what's another 2 or 3 characters, right?
Yeah,
I will admit I was genuinely surprised that we didn't see Lana Lang pop up and be like, "Oh, hey Clark, I haven't seen you since Smallville High School," or something like that. I mean, I thought that would be funny if they introduced Lana and she like runs into Lois and like, "Oh, hey, so I used to date Clark. Oh, now I'm dating Clark. Oh," and then that just branches off into another subplot right there.
There we go. Yeah, because that's what this movie needed, was another subplot to throw out there.
I know he missed the mark on that one. He could have added another subplot.
Yeah, we could have just thrown everything in there. Like, I'm surprised that we didn't see Brainiac, and we just bring in more villains, right?
Well, to be fair, when people are evacuating, they we do see signs for like cities like Gotham City and all that stuff. So
that's true. Yeah, that's true. So, but yeah, so the Superman is recuperating at the Kent family farm, where he gets this great motivational speech from his dad that's still alive, which. I don't know, it's weird, but obviously I always think about his dad being dead, so him being alive was like, oh, I guess that's unexpected. I'm glad that they just didn't feel the need to kill him. I wonder what that means for him in the future, though, because I feel like he maybe will be utilized in future Superman-related things as being a martyr, or he's going to end up being killed, but I guess that's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, like Superman, he's like rejuvenated. while this is happening, Lex Luthor finds out that Superman has escaped his pocket dimension. So what he does is he's like, okay, well, I really hate the Superman guy, so now I'm going to, I believe they like just, I don't know, they do some science thing where now all of a sudden the pocket dimension is like creating a giant rift that is now like just like destroying everything, and it's heading towards Metropolis. So now you have, with everything else going on, now the world is just kind of fracturing, and being sucked into, this pocket dimension, which, like I said, for, Lex Luthor being, one of these really smart characters, as much as I could understand him wanting to kill Superman, I don't know if it's worth it to destroy Earth in order to do it and killing yourself in the process.
Because I mean, in the comics, like his real intent is to be like either the sole hero of Metropolis or he wants to rule Metropolis. I forget.
Yes,
but he really wants to be the head honcho. So him destroying Metropolis would kind of defeat the purpose of what he had been wanting to do. But hey, if you're motivated by envy and you just really want to kill somebody, I mean, then what's a city, to you,
Yeah, just a little collateral damage, right? So, but this obviously lures Superman out, and before he can even deal with the rift, he has to deal with the henchman that we met earlier, which is the engineer and Ultraman. And I guess in a I don't know if I want to say an interesting twist, but I guess an unexpected twist.
A bizarre twist. You could say it's a bizarre twist.
yeah. Look at that. It's a bizarre. I like that. So, in this twist for Ultraman is actually just a clone of Superman. And what that does for the story, I don't know. I guess it does help to kind of show, like, how powerful Ultraman is, because him being a clone, he would have the same, the same strength as Superman. So I guess like they're trying to make sure that they make it clear that, these guys are very equal as far as strength goes. So, Superman ends up, defeating both of them, of course. And he ends up kind of confronting Lex Luthor at the end. And they kind of, have this, I guess, like weird ideological battle, right? Not a physical one, but one of ideology where, Superman's like, hey, I don't know why you hate me so much. I just want to be a good person. And, Lex Luthor's like, I don't like good people or something. I don't know.
I'm just as human as you are. Okay.
Yeah. Like, it's such a weird, like, discussion that happens at the end. And that's kind of our climax, because we have them, having this whole altercation. And
don't forget Crypto. Crypto has a little bit of fun with Lex.
That's true. Yes, he's kind of like the Hulk and Loki, right? Where he's just
it was very satisfactory. I will admit, I did enjoy that part.
Yes. It was funny to see him get ragdolled around. So, but Lex Luthor is captured. They're able to stop the rift, even though obviously it's probably thousands. Tens of thousands, probably even hundreds of thousands of people probably dead from everything that happened. But the rift is able to be restored. And Superman, he wins the day. Just throwing something else out there, Superman returns to the Fortress of Solitude, where we get to meet Supergirl's there. And I guess Superman's just been dog sitting this whole time for Crypto. Crypto's actually Supergirl's dog, and that's just it. That's just how it ends. And and I guess now when he's like being healed, instead of like watching the video of his Kryptonian parents, now he watches it of the Kent family. So I guess like that was somehow like the moral of something, was like, oh, I guess, my real parents were the Kent family, not my Kryptonian family. I don't know. but they wanted to throw that in there, and I guess that's supposed to be a nice way to end the movie. So, final thoughts, right? This was a mess of a movie for me. I think that James Gunn does a good job of bringing in characters. I think he does a good job of, certain aspects of his work is strong. But to your point, right? Superman, while he is the focal character, he's probably not as big of a main character as you would like to see in something called Superman. There is so many story elements that are in this. And it feels like if you take a moment just to look at all the different things that are out there, it just felt like he was trying to mash so many different things in this that it wasn't needed, right? Like, you can't have, you got Lex Luthor and everything's going on there. You have Ultraman, who's now a clone of Superman. So, like, you just throw something else in there. You have an engineer who, to me, was totally pointless to the plot, and he didn't need to introduce her. You have this whole geopolitical thing going on with Baravia, which, by the way, the Justice Gang goes in and actually helps them because there was a whole subplot of them, like, going under attack again that got resolved with the Justice Gang. So even in everything that we talked about, there were still story elements that we just ignored. Otherwise, this would be a 5-hour review with everything that they wanted to go through in this movie. And it just was, everything just felt like there was no real conclusion in it. And there were so many plot threads, I just lost track of what the story really was. Like, was it Superman realizing, like, how important it was that, he's ultimately makes his own decisions and not the ones that his Kryptonian parents wanted to have? Was this a story of a vulnerable Superman be able to, like, deal with, like, his relationship with Lois Lane? There just was so much. I don't even really know what they wanted to make out of this film. And it just felt confused with the message it was trying to say. I will say it was very gutsy to have kind of this more vulnerable Superman, because I think when you think of Superman, you just think of this guy that's just so strong. It's hard to have, like, there's not a whole lot of villains that could really compare to him. So I think having him kind of be more vulnerable and being, like, because he's kind of younger in his Superman journey, you could kind of be like, hey, he's just a little bit, he's not as skilled or talented as he has been in the past. So, maybe that's why he's kind of losing in fights that maybe you wouldn't think he's losing or shouldn't lose. But with doing that, it made Superman just kind of feel a little bit too weak to me. So I think that instead of, making him vulnerable, I think he went too far in the other direction and just made him a little bit too vulnerable. But I will say that the relationship he has with Lois, I think, kind of gave some extra intrigue to the character of Superman, because we always think about him as being, kind of this fighter and, what he does, but kind of having this romantic subplot was probably one of the only things that I felt worked well for the story. But I just think that there was too much there that didn't work for my taste. So I think if I was to give this a grade, actually, I want you to give your final thoughts while I think about the grade, because I don't know what I want to give this. So why don't you go ahead? Why don't you give your final thoughts?
5. I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought the visuals were terrific. I mean, the audience was absolutely spot on that. In terms of the story, James, I mean, if you can excise maybe 8 storylines and focus on 1 or 2, that'd be great. David Corns I thought he brought a real vulnerability and innocence to the character, because think about it. I mean, Batman and Superman are the 2 biggest heroes in the DC universe, and they're foils to one another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Batman is always portrayed as a jaded crime fighter who's seen it all and done it all. he's a veteran and he's willing to use, any underhanded tactic to get the information he needs to save Gotham. Superman is very much, we do this the right way. You don't beat the shit out of people. You don't stab them with batarangs or anything like that. And in the comics, Batman even calls him a Boy Scout, the big blue Boy Scout. So I think if and when they do a Batman Superman movie or another Justice League movie, I would love to see that conflict between Cornswit's Superman and hopefully Alan Richter's Batman. And yes, I am in that camp. I do want Alan Richter as Batman. So that's my score for Superman. If you hopefully I've given you enough time to figure out what you want to say.
It didn't change my score, right? I was just kind of curious where we landed with everything. I was going to give it a 2.8 out of 5. I think it's worthwhile to watch, right? So just to be clear, I know not exactly like huge, like, oh, super positive grades. I think it's worthwhile to watch, but I think there's a lot of things out there that were misses. I 100% agree with you with how they wanted to do this, done by David Corenswet. So I will give them props for that rendition of Superman. And you brought up an interesting point. How does an audience connect with Superman, a guy that's invincible, has all these special abilities? Well, I think the way that they do it is by having this Clark Kent character, and I think that his dynamic with Lois Lane and their kind of relationship, I think helped give this movie some heart that we don't normally see with Superman movies. But the subplots
we don't see it to the same extent. I mean,
sure.
I mean, we've seen Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, on screen, just as we did Amy Adams and Henry Cavill.
Of course, yes. It was, we got a different side of it, which I think worked in the movie's favor to create something we don't normally see. But there was just so many other elements that, to me, just fell flat. You just can't throw everything into the movie. Somebody had to step in and be like, okay, we need to cut this out, right? The whole story with his parents. Cut it out. It's not useful, right? There were so many different ways to go about it. You did not have to include that at all. It felt like you almost felt obligated to do it. And to me, there was a payoff there, but it wasn't earned in the slightest. So I just think that there was a big opportunity there to do something different. I know box office numbers wise, people are going to go watch this regardless, right? I think that there's enough goodwill out there that people want to watch it. But like I said, as I watched it, there were so many things that didn't ring for me. Everyone that's like, oh, this is the best like superhero thing I've ever watched, I don't get it, right? But in that same token, people that are like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm like, not really, right? Like, there's a lot worse that we've seen out there, even from a Superman-led film. So I think that there is a happy medium there, and I think there's things that you can like and things that you don't like. And I just feel like there's more things I didn't enjoy than I thought I would enjoy. And hopefully whatever they do with the rest of these characters, because I know, like they've already mentioned, a lot of these characters sign up for multiple projects. So obviously they're going to look to do more. Do we get that Super Friends down the road? Maybe they just don't want to call it the Justice League, and they're like, "Hey, let's just call it Super Friends, and we'll just kind of dodge that."
Yeah, I'm thinking they're going to try to go more retro vibe and definitely go with Super Friends, and not the Justice League.
Very fair. So, but yeah, I guess that's my final thought. So
let me ask you this, because like I mentioned previously, James Gunn has at this point he's got a knack for doing superhero teams, and he's already mentioned that the next Batman movie he does is going to be focusing on the Bat family. Do you think this is going to be the future of DC, where we're going to see less focus on individual heroes and more focus on either teams or, like, I guess, superhero family kind of thing?
No, that's a great question, and I would agree with you. I think we've seen James Gunn's track record, and this is what he gravitates towards, right? I think he likes to have that dynamic of having all the characters because he has more to play off of, and that's the way he likes to do things. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that it could sometimes get so overblown that you try to do so much with so many characters that too many characters fall between the cracks, right? Like Hawkgirl, right? I mean, what can you really say about Hawkgirl after watching this? Like, she was there for a few times, and it's like, okay, cool. She swings a hammer, and that's that, right? Like, we see so little of her, even, with Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern. I really liked him in what I saw, but let's be real here, right? Like, he probably had less than 3 minutes of screen time. So,
Right.
you keep bringing all these elements here, and it's like, when you dumb something down, right? And I'm going to bring up the MonsterVerse once again, right? When you try to do too much, I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure. Like, you have this whole repertoire, right? You have all these comics and all these characters that you have an opportunity to build upon. Just let it happen naturally. Don't feel like you have to put everything in to like start spin-offs or just start other things. Like, I think we could have watched the Justice Gang and not had Justice Gang be a part of this movie, and I would still go watch Justice Gang all the same, right? I don't have to see them in this story to be like, oh, there's a Justice Gang, this is going to get me interested in watching them. I don't need that, right? What I want to have was a good Superman story, and I feel like it got bogged down by trying to have all these other story elements going on because you want to spin them off or create a series off of it or, set up future movies. Don't do it, right? Just give us strong films and people will go watch them.
Well, my concern here is because because we've already discussed this movie to death, but when we see if and when we see Batman the Brave and the Bold, and we see an introduction of the Bat Family, I'm kind of concerned. Is it going to be a repeat of what we see in Superman? My instinct is telling me yes, we are going to see James Gunn kind of take a character that is renowned for being dark and gritty and kind of adding levity that would distract us from what we know about the character.
That's
and
fair.
The characters around him.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I don't know if you watched that show Harley Quinn, but Harley Quinn
I've watched it.
Yeah, it takes that element and kind of blows it out of proportion and makes it a little bit crazy. And mind you, it can be a little bit much at times, but at the same time, it feels like if James Gunn wants to do something similar in Brave and the Bold, he can sort of borrow elements from Harley Quinn to kind of apply to what he envisions for the Batman universe in DC, but at the same time also take a little bit from what Matt Reeves did and kind of honor what has traditionally been seen as DC's most famous anti-hero. Yep. I just think for right now, until we see the trailer for Brave and the Bold, I'm inclined to think he might not get it right. He might give us a Bat Family that's that looks comically comic accurate, but are they behaving in a way that we're familiar with? That's just something that I just want to put out there just in case.
Very fair.
All right, Lee, why don't you go ahead and take us out?
Yeah, so I don't want to know how long we've been talking about this. So thank you if you've made it this far. I wish I could give you a gold star for listening to our shit for this long, but
why don't you give him why don't you just give him a blessing because you are the movie pope. So
that's true. Thank you for listening to our bullshit for this long, especially Luca. So, but
listen, I've got no choice. I'm the producer of the show. All right.
That's true, and you are an excellent co-host. So I give you round of applause for being good with sticking with me and my giant tirades on film. So.
I mean, it's been what, 3 years now? I mean,
yeah.
how the time has flown.
Yeah, and let's not pretend like we weren't talking about films for like a decade before that. But yes, as far as putting it out there, it's there. So, but thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate any likes, shares, any feedback you can provide. Love hearing from our audience and looking forward to talking about whatever the next fun thing that's out there. Probably the Fantastic Four, right? So, so looking forward to that, and I guess we will see you in the future.